Hi, I'm Jaynie Morris, and welcome to our very brand new podcast series. This is a special series. It's a one-off. It's Women in Politics, Independence Day. And the reason that we decided to do this series is that around the world over the last couple of years, there's been the Me Too movement. Down here in the Southern Hemisphere, there's been the uprising with Enough is Enough. But it's not just in the last few years. The issues of women and women's voices has been around since women and men even were on this planet. And so the reason that my team at Transforming Now Together and I decided that we were going to put this podcast series together for you is that we were made very much aware that there's a lot of elections coming up around the world in governments, local governments, state governments, federal governments, any form of government. There's lots of elections coming up, and what we've seen is that there are a lot more women putting their hand up and saying, not only do I want a voice, but I want to take some action and positively contribute to change within our communities and within our countries. And so that's why we've created Women in Politics Independence Day. And I hope you enjoy this series, because we're kicking it off with a local in South Australia, in the country of Australia. Her name is Dianah Walter. She is the independent candidate for Narungga in South Australia. She's going to let us know why, when, and how she's doing what she's doing. But before she does, we want to find out about her. So welcome to the podcast, Dianah.
Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to be having this conversation at this really important time in history, really. And the fact that this is going global, it's just a fabulous opportunity to share this beautiful place of South Australia with the rest of the globe.
Now, it is a beautiful place.
It is.
In Australia, actually, isn't it? So before we get into why you've got into politics and what's coming up for you and your community, Dianah, can you tell us a little bit about where you live and a bit about you?
So absolutely. So for those that are joining from around the globe, if you think of the map of Australia, South Australia is the middle state. And there's a peninsula in the state that looks a bit like, it's referred to often as the leg of Italy, but we like to call it the leg. It's the York Peninsula. And where I'm situated right now is at Moota Bay on the western coast of the York Peninsula. And if you looked at our map and the geography, I'm at about where the knee would be. And I'm representing, or hoping to represent, the state electorate of Narungga, named after the local Indigenous people who've been here for millennia. So Narungga is about to hopefully see change and be transformed with a different representative. We cover nearly 11,500 kilometres. That's quite a large electorate to be getting out and about in. And my little car has been going north and south and east and west and all around the electorate, which has been really lovely to get out and do that grassroots connection with the community.
So, Dianah, are you actually from Moonta? Is this your hometown, or?
Yeah, a great question. You know, I was born not far from here, just north of here in the Southern Flinders Ranges, another iconic area in our country. In the city of Port Pirie, and grew up at Napperby, not far from here. But this is one of those stories where we'd come to the York Peninsula and Moonta Bay before there were bitumen roads, in our car, and have our summer holidays here. And we have the most beautiful memories of coming here. And it's interesting that now this has been my permanent home for the last decade or more, but it's been our other home off and on for many years. And it's interesting, I was chatting to someone recently on the beach, and they reminded me that I'd never be a local, which I thought was interesting. And I said, oh, no, I wouldn't, because we have our Narungga people that have been here for millennia. I said, but sometimes, it's not, home is not where you're born, but it's where you're prepared to die. And, if something untoward happened tomorrow, I know that I'd be at home. And I think that's a really nice analogy.
What a great sentiment as well.
Yeah.
That really is special. Indeed, it's interesting that you say as well that, you know, sometimes people that are born in a particular town or what have you, and then always live there, and then other people sort of move in, that they always, you know, I just personally, after I moved back from living in America, because as my followers know, I lived and worked in America for 10 years. And when I came back, my family and I first stopped on the Gold Coast in Queensland. Didn't quite want to come back to where we live now. We wanted to sort of like stay in that holiday mode. And we were there for about 2 years, and locals said that. They said, you'll never be a Queenslander. You'll never be a Gold Coaster. You weren't born here. So it's interesting.
Yeah, they were quite parochial, aren't we?
Yes, yes.
But I think if we look at it more broadly, regional Australia and regional South Australia has been my home and will always be my home. And my now adult children live close by, and I can't imagine them living anywhere else.
So let's talk about women in politics and you making the decision that you were going to run for the next. Now, this is the state election in South Australia, isn't it?
Yes.
It's in March 2022.
Well, yes, it's
which is
this
now
Saturday, 2 weeks away.
Oh, right.
So, and I've been on the campaign trail. I announced exactly 12 months out. So I'm at that pointy end with just 2 weeks to go.
So, Dianah, tell us what was the moment that you decided that you were going to jump into an area that most would say, don't even think about going in that industry?
Yeah.
Because can we call it an industry? I mean, politics.
No.
You like it's a weird environment, isn't it? It's got all of these different nuances and, you know, highs and lows and sunnies and dark, you know, hidden.
Yeah, so
it's
probably
interesting.
not an industry as such, but it's a system. Our democracy is set up in such a way, and your listeners are going to hear my dog barking. She's annoyed that I put her outside. It's set up to serve a particular structure, and it was set up a long time ago and it served us well. But right now, we have an opportunity to bring a different mix into democracy. And I was again chatting, lots of talking, and it wasn't. We were talking about what you've just described as, you know, it's an interesting industry, but politics is one thing. But I think democracy, and I like to say, well, and not everyone can participate in politics because it isn't that simple. It isn't. But democracy, we are free to participate. And that is my driver to keep coming back to democracy. And to answer your question about my motivation and why, I've always been that person. And I was again chatting with another person about back in school when a teacher would say, who would like to be on the SRC, the Student Representative Council? And in grade 2, Dianah would put her hand up, and I'd also be the one that would go out and adjudicate, you know, the things that were happening in the schoolyard. But a very defining moment for me was in 2013 in our nation's capital in Canberra, and I was there with a group of regional women, like this amazing, like 300 of us, 300 strong. I was representing the seafood industry, and some other really incredible women were around me, and we were at a regional women's conference over a period of days. And in one of the sessions, there was a breakout session, and a group of us chose to go into a room, a concurrent session, and it was run by a local group of Indigenous women. And they opened up with this question, and I'm going to put this question to your listeners and to you as well. This very quietly beautiful Indigenous woman, she asked this question: tell us, or tell me, what your mother's mother's mother did. What was it about your mother's mother's mother that you are proud of? And I still have goosebumps, and, you know, I could not answer that question. And at that moment, I knew where she was going with that. She could go back millennia, she could go back generations to her kin, and she knew where her roots were. I knew that I had ancestors that would come out of Prussia and Germany and Wales and England and settled in the Barossa Valley and knew all of that, but I couldn't go back that far in my lineage. And it was that defining moment that I thought, I've got an opportunity to make a difference, and I want my great, great, great grandchild to know what their great, 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 great grandmother did. And that's the defining moment that made me think that in order to do that, I can advocate around things that I love and things that are close to me. But in order to make true change, I need to step away from the advocacy space and into that, it's adversarial really, but into a space that we can bring some kindness and compassion and deal with things differently, so that the laws and the legislation that our children and our grandchildren are yet to be born get to work with, that we can influence that right now. And we can do that, and I can do that with these other incredible women that are bringing a very different lens to what politics looks like in Australia. There's my motivation.
Wow, that's incredibly powerful, and I would suggest that every one of our viewers and every one of our listeners just got that same reaction. And what a great motivation for you to where you are now. Let me ask you, obviously our podcast series name is Women in Politics Independence Day. I like to say it's Independence Rising. You're running as an independent. All of our guests are going to be that we're interviewing are running as independents. Why did you decide that you would run as an independent rather than put your hand up to be nominated for one of the major political parties?
I've never been affiliated with a political party. Well, that said, I've been part of a union once upon a time, and I've been involved in peak bodies and advocacy groups that are loosely aligned with other shades of politics. I didn't want to be constrained or gagged or muffled in any way by the party line, and I've seen that happen. I've seen it happen too often, and I've seen in matters of conscience and matters that are important, especially when it comes to women and women's issues. And this is not just about gender. In fact, it's more nuanced than that. It's really about having a voice that can cut through and can be heard regardless, but also having that bravery to say how it is and say how it is with conviction. And I couldn't imagine being aligned with a party that didn't have a particular view, which is my view, and yes, everyone's entitled to their view, around, for instance, voluntary assisted dying. And recently in South Australia, we finally decriminalised abortion. And it's a health issue, but for so many years, men have been making decisions about women's reproductive rights. So there's that. But then I'd like to think that if I was given the opportunity to make some decisions that affected mostly men, that I'd have the intelligence, the compassion and the kindness to bring them to the table and not exclude their voice. So yeah, there is that. And I think we're seeing more and more of a very gentle shade of politics, and women everywhere are not necessarily raising their voices, but they're certainly improving their arguments.
Health is, you've touched there on some health issues, Dianah. A question that I've been hearing a lot lately is, because most of our news coverage over the last couple of years, justifiably so, has been around COVID, and what are your thoughts about before COVID? Was there a health crisis, for instance, here in South Australia where you're running for your seat? Was there a health crisis before COVID?
Yeah, and that word's not a word that we like to use lightly. And I think what we see here in regions and regional South Australia is that COVID exacerbated what was already a really challenging time for regions. I'm saying that our health crisis is a chronic crisis, not a COVID one. We have an ageing workforce in health, especially allied health in the nursing profession. The average age of our wonderful wives and midwives and nurses is about 55. We struggle to retain our young and vibrant brains to come back and practice in allied health from once they go away to study in Adelaide or other universities. So this is, I won't make any bones about it. We are in the grips of what has been the result of neglect. And for those that look at numbers around politics, I'm sitting in what is known to be a very safe Liberal seat and has been for decades. In fact, I have to smash a margin of 18.2%, and that's not lost on me. So there was a recent article in a publication, newsprint, that talked about the top 10 seats in the House of Assembly in South Australia. There's 47 seats in the top 10 that could define who the next Premier is. And isn't it interesting that Narangba was in that top 10? And you wouldn't have thought so, given that it's such a safe seat. And I'm saying it's only notionally safe because I don't think anyone's really come and tested it the way I have. So yeah, let's see how that come back and have this conversation in a month.
Well, what are people in your local community then telling you that needs to change if that be the case?
Yeah, look, they're saying that the seat needs to be marginal because they say that safe seats get ignored. Safe seats get ignored by the party that claim it. And then if that party is in opposition, the government will ignore it as well because they don't need to put any effort in because they don't think they're going to win it. So myself and other women like me are going to shake that up a bit. We are.
It's going to be a very interesting time, both for state and federal and major country elections over the next 12 months.
Yeah,
that's for
I
sure.
think the women that are running, there's 5 women, independent women running in regional South Australia, and 3 of them belong because the federal seat of Grey is such a big area geographically. There's 3 of us in diverse parts of the state that federally they sit in the seat of Grey. So I think this might be a precursor to a period of change federally as well.
And it's a long time coming, that's for sure. What does accountability mean to you, Dianah?
Yeah, accountability, that's a word I chose because it has a number of different meanings to different people. But really, this is about being accountable to the community, being transparent, telling it how it is. And I'm not going to dwell on an issue that's happening here in this electorate with the incumbent because that is not important. But the important thing here is that if I am the independent member, the truly independent member for Narangba after March 19, then I will be able to hold the government of the day to account for the people of Narangba. So that accountability it stretches across the horizon and it infiltrates every possible piece of fabric in our community, even to the point where I will be more transparent when I'm talking about how I'm spending public funds and how I'm utilising allowances that are made available to me. So accountability is holding them to account, and I won't use the term that Democrats used some time ago, but I think you get the picture. It's really about keeping an open mind and speaking with a voice that represents the community.
Dianah, one of the things that you have done since the moment that you declared to your local community and indeed the entire state of South Australia that you would be putting your hand up and running as an independent for the area of Narangba, is that you got out this massive big seat, this chair.
Yes. Yeah, it's right here. If I can pick it up.
You've got this chair, and I must say to our viewers and listeners, by the way, make sure that you go to the shirosunlimited.com website. The latest issue of, or the very first one for 2022, is actually chock-a-block full of all of as heaps of women, independent women running independently in elections, state and federally in Australia. And Dianah is one of those featured stories. And so you'll see the chair in there as well. But I sounded like a child's school TV show then.
Yeah,
chair in there. What? So great move. Great mental link with you.
It's a seat. It's about having a seat. It's about having a seat in the community. I have two chairs, and I could turn, I don't know, I probably won't, it'll upset your
We'll see it in the magazine. People want to see it. You've got to go and get the magazine.
They do, absolutely. But it's a linen covered seat, and it's been everywhere with me. It's very well loved, and it's very well sat on. But I'm looking at it just over my shoulder now, and I can read some of the inscriptions. And for instance, rebuild with TAFE, jobs, health, climate change, ICAC. There's a conversation for another day. Let's have a seat together. I had a seat with Dianah, accountability. But my favourite thing on this seat is, and it's in the turquoise colour, and I'll tell you the story of turquoise in a minute. There's 3 words on one side of this seat, and it says trucks and lollies. So I had a conversation at a field days, and I was talking to a man who runs a trucking company, and his very, very politely and well-mannered young boy was standing alongside of him. And after I'd finished talking to his dad, I got down to his level and I said, we've heard about what's really important to Dad, but hey, I want to hear what's important to you. And he very changed his posture, and he was very, very considered. He said, well, like Dad, it's trucks. We've got to keep the country moving. He said, but it's lollies as well. And I said, here's the pen. And he wrote on the chair, trucks and lollies. And then he said, I don't think I've spelt lollies wrong, but I think you can see what I mean. Oh, that's priceless.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
Isn't it? Because after all, at the end of the day, the generations that are coming after us are the ones that we're doing what we're doing now for. So that's,
agree more.
Yeah, great story. Before we let you go, a couple of things, and thank you again for your time today. It's great talking with you. You touched on ICAC. We don't have enough time to get into that. No. However, for people who don't know what ICAC means, what's it stand for?
So the Independent Commission Against Corruption.
And if you are elected and it has another chance to be discussed in Parliament, is that something that you'll be supporting?
Well, thank you. Yes. Well, I think we do. And what concerns me is that the definition of corruption has been watered down. And I'd like to see that reinstated. And I'd like to think that the current MPs and some new ones, a new crop of politicians that come on board, might actually like to see that reinstated as well. Because at the moment, the definition of corruption as it stands right now probably isn't as strong as it needs to be.
Well, we look forward to seeing movement on that front, definitely, in the future. Dianah, before we let you go, I always ask my guests this question, and you do not escape it. What would you advise if you had an 8-year-old Dianah in front of you right now? What would you advise her for her future?
When your mother and father, if you have the privilege of having them in your world, provides you with some advice, and generally in a story, that you listen, and you may not understand the meaning of their advice or their words at the time, but I know right now, and I just wish Dad was here today, there are so many words of wisdom that he offered me. They were packaged into these really lovely little anecdotes, and it's only now with the passing of time and having children of my own that I absolutely value the sharing of knowledge between our family members and our parents. So I can hear my mum saying, pick up your shoes and tidy up your room. But really the message there was, I love you, I care for you, and that makes us who we are. So yeah, listen to your family and your friends, and taking advice is one thing. You don't have to take all the advice you receive, but certainly there is wisdom in everything that we hear every day. We just need to pick out the gold.
Great advice, and may I be as bold to suggest that that's probably part of the foundation of what you'll take into Parliament with you as well.
Thank you,
Dianah. Dianah Walter, it's been an absolute pleasure having your company with us on our very special series of Women in Politics Independence Day. Good luck on March the 19th, 2022 in your state of South Australia, representing your community in Narungga. And it's been a delight to have you. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
And if you've enjoyed listening to this new series of Women in Politics Independence Day as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you, then you know what to do. Subscribe, comment. Now, we do want your feedback. So any comments that you've got or any feedback, just pop it in below in the comments section. If you've got any questions that you'd like to pose to Dianah as well, you can pop them there. Or of course, all of her contact details are below where you're watching or listening to this right now on whatever podcast app you get all of your favorite podcasts for, including iTunes, Apple, Spotify, and of course you can get all of the latest episodes and all of the upcoming ones at jayniemorris.com. And as I mentioned before, don't forget, over at our sister company, Shiro's Unlimited, the latest issue, the first issue for 2022 of Shiro's Unlimited magazine. It's the biggest one that they've ever produced, and it is chock-a-block full with women that are running independently in government in all of the upcoming elections, plus all of their normal contributors as well. It's always inspiring, that magazine. Of course, Dianah Walter is in that magazine, so you can read more about her there as well. So in the meantime, wherever you are in this amazing, fantastic, beautiful world of ours, I'm Jaynie Morris. It's been great to have your company, and look forward to having you tune in next on Women in Politics Independence Day.